Dorian Gray is called Dorian Gray because he's in a morally gray area for most of the story. Here's a little hack for great skin. Get an artist to make a portrait of you and pray that it ages for you so you don't have to. You can be a hottie forever. Possible side effects may include you becoming an evil, murderous, misogynistic ass with unrelenting feelings of superiority and being shallow AF. But on the bright side, you'll have great skin. Okay, I should stop. There is absolutely no way I can be serious talking about Dorian Gray's dramatic ass.
Let's begin.
Can we talk about how Dorian wasn't actually a narcissistic ass in the beginning? He was low-key pure and he just had the wrong ideas and he was way too easy to influence, especially by that bitch-ass Lord Henry. The simple plot of the most immoral Victorian novels. So a painter paints a portrait of a beautiful young man named Dorian Gray who exchanges his soul for eternal youth and beauty. I wish I could say that with a serious face. So his portrait starts to age for him while he remains eternally young and good looking. But the portrait doesn't just age, it also reflects all his sins and wrongdoings. Thereby, the portrait turns to the devil while Dorian Gray remains indifferent to his actions. It's a story of hedonism, superficiality, and moral emptiness. I don't think I have to say this, but this Victorian Gothic novel is written by the flamboyant Irish playwright Oscar Wilde, one of my all-time favorite authors ever. It's arguably literature's greatest study of shallowness, vanity, casual cruelty, and hedonistic selfishness, while lays it down with absolute perfection. So we're dealing with three characters here. First is Lord Henry, a hedonistic man looking for people to corrupt. The second one is Basil Hallward, a soft-spoken painter who is in love with his sitter. Yes, Basil is in love with Dorian. Don't argue with me on that. And lastly, Dorian Gray, a young, impressionable man who is just waiting to be brainwashed. Basil Hallward is an artist who, after painting a portrait of Dorian Gray, becomes obsessed with his beauty. The entire aspect of the homosexual versus art object love Basil feels for Dorian is left very vague, likely because of the time it was written in, but he definitely has a crush on Dorian. Dorian then meets a friend of Basil's, that is Lord Henry, and he easily becomes influenced by Lord Henry's worldviews, which are basically extremely hedonistic. Lord Henry basically believes that the only life worth living is the one in pursuit of beauty, satisfaction of senses, and aesthetics. Honestly, is there a more dramatic character than Dorian Gray in the history of classic literature? Because I think not. There's like a whole paragraph about him realizing how pretty he is after he looks at his portrait. And then he gets really mad and flings himself on the divan and cries into the cushion because he's jealous of it. Because it won't get old and stop being pretty, but he will. And then he decides the day he realizes he's getting old, he will kill himself. And then Basil picks up a knife to destroy the painting because of the effect it had on Dorian, and Dorian leaps across the room and tears the knife away from Basil's hand and proceeds to say to destroy the painting would be murder, and thereby professing himself to be in love with it, in love with his own portrait.
God, Dorian's dramatic ass has no chill at all.
You know what? I wish I had my own emotional support decaying portrait that portrays all my sins. That would be dope as hell. And it would also look much better than Dorian Gray's. Just saying. Lord Henry seemed like a good mentor. A man who appeared so intellectual, witty, entertaining, and was just known for his utterly wicked words. But he was not a deep man and he did not believe a thing of what he said. Dorian Gray just took him way too seriously. He took it as gospel. His dramatic ass took things to the next level, which was absolutely unnecessary. I don't get why people hate Lord Henry in the first place. Like, yeah, he was a bad influence, but Dorian Gray didn't have many brain cells to begin with. It's his own stupidity that led to his downfall. I just think Lord Henry was having fun. Lord Henry was just having fun because he didn't need to do anything else. Like, he was a rich dude. He was an aristocrat and he lived at a time where it was not cool to work. So I actually like Lord Henry. I think he's like really entertaining and stuff. Anyways, that's just my opinion. As a result, Lord Henry's words definitely made Dorian's life meaningless, but I still don't blame him.
Dorian deserved it.
One of the main reasons for Dorian's downfall is accountability. He was never accountable till the very end. This was also why I never felt sympathy for Dorian Gray. As much as I enjoyed his stupidity, he's not a likable character, for obvious reasons. Dorian's lack of accountability doomed his fate to eternal immaturity. It was Basil's fault for painting the picture. It was Sybil's fault for being a bad actress that made him fall out of love with her. All the people he ruined in his relentless pursuit of pleasure and debauchery ruined themselves. He believed that he took no part in their ruination. Dude's so whack, he ultimately blamed his own portrait. So he sought to destroy it. Because his portrait was the only evidence of his black soul. Because it was a representation of his sin. I feel like if you're going to be a bad, selfish person, then own up to it. Be a supervillain. Don't try to act like your sins should be laid at other people's feet. But that's the route Mr. Dorian Gray took. Dorian hid his painting, but I bet y'all if he would have just hung it in his living room and been like, I get someone in every night to paint it a little more gruesome, I would totally believe his dramatic ass. One might ask, is this a horror novel? And to that I'd like to say it's a study of how the sins we commit cannot be hidden no matter what lies we tell ourselves. Interestingly enough, Mr. Wilde does not elaborate on the vile acts committed by Dorian Gray, but he leaves it to the expansive imagination of the human mind to surmise the bulk of his action. It didn't matter that Dorian Gray didn't acknowledge his sins because they caught up with him at the end. The horror is how he'd confronted the consequences of his sins and yet turned away from them. The horror is the lives he destroyed but never even felt a moment's remorse. Fundamentally, Dorian Gray is an angelically beautiful monster. We can look upon beauty and we can be fooled into never asking what lies beneath. In simple terms, pretty privilege. Dorian has tons of it. While Dorian realizes that physical beauty is finite, the beauty of this story is not. Writing style. Oscar Wilde has a gift for prose and dialogue. Honestly, his writing is magical. It is so lyrical. Every page, I just wonder how he does that with words. Like, it's so engaging, so compelling. His dry humor is like, it's so good. His dialogue is witty and humorous. Also, in my opinion, I think this book should be called Narcissism and Consequences. But okay, the picture of Dorian Gray works as well. Let's talk about rating for a second. So when it comes to classic literature, I group it into 3 different categories. The first one is edgy, depressed, and dumbass. This one is definitely edgy with a hint of depression. So like a basic bitch, I gave it 5 stars. And this one's the first 5-starred book of the year for me, I think. Yeah, I did. It reiterates the fact that literature is just a vessel for the repressed human need to just go fucking insane. Do with that what you will. I'd like to conclude by saying the writing stunning, the message timeless and well layered. The characters deplorable but complex, which is how I like my characters to be. It's definitely a book that'll stay with me for a while. So the moral of the story is that selling your soul for a picture is probably not worth it. I just felt like I have to put that out there. Also, the ending is fantastic. It's perfection.
If you're already melting in this hot, sticky summer, I'd say melt away into this book because it's a great summer read.
I have been Mansi, the host of this inconsistent and mediocre booktube channel, which is slightly more consistent nowadays. I hope you have an immaculate day ahead. I'm gonna go and channel my inner Dorian Gray by flinging myself onto the nearest couch and dramatically cry till someone notices. Yep, that's the plan. Bye.